Brandon Warne from the Locked On Twins podcast and Access Twins newsletter. Is it Warne or Warney? This is the first time we've ever talked.
Yeah, Warne is correct. So just pretend that he's not there.
I was like, I've never actually talked to him in person, but I think it's pronounced this way. So it was a full guess.
Excellent. Hey man, thanks for taking time out of your day to talk to us. We appreciate it. And I know you're probably, I'm going to guess, a Vikings fan and recovering from that debacle last night. I was actually pulling for the Vikes. Even as a Bears fan, I was pulling for the Vikes. Yeah. And that was woof.
Not exactly a great showing for the North so far, so we'll see what next weekend holds. But yeah, was not excited to go face the Eagles next weekend, and even less excited to not have that chance. So yeah, pretty tough night.
All right, let's talk Twins baseball. You spent a lot of your summer talking Twins baseball. You spent a lot of your offseason talking Twins baseball. If Pablo Lopez is a Cubs trade target, tell me why they should go after this guy. If you're giving the Cubs a scouting report on this is why you want him, what would it be?
He checks all the boxes of what you want for an ace. He's durable, has good stuff, and even when he struggles, he keeps you in ball games. And I think beyond that, he's a tremendous clubhouse guy, great in the community. I mean, I'm not his agent or anything, but if I was to trade for any starting pitcher and pay a premium, and again, maybe I've got a vested personal interest in the Twins, so maybe I'm kind of trying to drive his value up. But this would be your guy. He's just tremendous, and I can't say enough good things about him. Now, trade me all of your best prospects, and we can maybe make something happen.
See, because our live YouTube chat is saying this Lopez, he's so mid. He's a number 4 starter. Like it's a roller coaster of information coming my way. You believe in this guy. You're okay with them keeping him?
I mean, the biggest issue with trying to figure out who the great pitchers are right now is we don't have those pillars like the Greinke's and Scherzers and Verlanders of who they used to be. And so when you look at the top 30 players, like by Fangraphs WAR or whatever, there's pitchers in there you would be surprised by, and Pablo Lopez would be in or around that list. It's an ever-evolving group, but I mean, the fact that Justin Steele is in that mix and wasn't a couple years ago, it's changing a lot, and Pablo Lopez is right in the thick of that. Last year, Dan Szymborski had Zips come out today, and he talked about pitchers not pitching to their secondary numbers. I think Pablo is a good example of that, and I think he's way more the 2023 version of himself than the 2024. He's tremendous, and this is not me just blowing smoke.
All right, well then let's flip it. If you're the Cubs and you're in Chicago and you're thinking about trading for Pablo Lopez, what's the downside to it?
Honestly, I mean, there isn't a ton. Anytime you trade for a pitcher, there's going to be some risk. But for what you would pay the dollars to Pablo on this free agent market, you wouldn't get a pitcher close to his caliber. I heard you guys talking about Jack Flaherty beforehand and what he would cost on the market. A better contract is the one that Lopez has right now. So there's risk in going 3, 4, 5 years, like you guys said, to Flaherty as well. I just think there's not a ton of risk outside of the inherent pitchers are always an injury risk situation that's true of anybody. And you can never have too much pitching, excuse me, and you can never have too much pitching. And, the Twins are going to be like at the seller's table saying that exact mantra.
I wasn't, off the top of my head, I wasn't sure what his contract situation was. He's still got 3 more years on his 4-year deal. Yep. He's 29 years old, will be a free agent in 2028.
Good control.
Said to make $21.5 million each of the next 3 seasons. And so I think Flaherty at AAV wise will make more next season. And so you're right in that. And I think that in terms of durability, I think that's the biggest thing about Pablo Lopez that sticks out to me. 32 starts each of the last 3 years, I believe. Is I guess my question for you in terms of all of that is what prospects do you think the Twins would be interested from the Cubs? Because I look at their roster and I like who they got at third base. Obviously, Buxton's been there a long time, but he is older. Is he going to play center field every day?
Or are they looking for major leaguers?
Yeah,
too,
I guess I'm trying to get an understanding of the situation because we know that the financial problem there right now with the TV and stuff. We know about that, but what roster-wise would the Twins be interested in from the Cubs?
And that's the issue this offseason with not spending money is anything you trade, whatever you get back, you have to find a way for it to fit. And you kind of like who you got at third base. You kind of like who you got at second base. You're not trading something big for a first baseman. You like your catcher. You like your outfield. And so adding more like players you don't know what you have in, like prospects or like a hypothetical PCA, where hasn't really shown what he can be yet. That kind of player, like that just adds to an existing bin of those players in Minnesota. And that's why it's so hard to find a good trade fit for anybody, whether it's someone as far down as Chris Paddock or as high up as Pablo Lopez is. They've got a pretty good bullpen in place. They got a pretty good rotation in place. They got a pretty good offense in place. How do you turn that savings into impact on the big league side? And I do believe it would be, higher end, further up prospects. But the Twins have the answer in center field, they think, in Emmanuel Rodriguez coming up here, or Walker Jenkins in either a corner. Or I don't really see him staying in center, but I think, that's just kind of a last-ditch option. They're in a weird spot. They're a talented team with a lot of players that they really don't know how to utilize at this point. And at the same time, they want to win, so they don't want to overexpose guys. It's a weird spot to be in, and I think they're going to get sold soon enough that the budget crunch will be a little bit overstated too. I think that's maybe the elephant in the room too, is that there's a potential that the deal is moving faster than we know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, here in Chicago, I would almost guarantee that like Pete Crow-Armstrong won't be somebody that the Cubs will be talking about. But you're right. All these teams, the Cubs, the Twins, all these mid-level teams that think they can get one of the extra playoff spots because everybody makes the playoffs now, it seems like. But you're in a division where the Tigers look like they're going to be pretty good again. Some people are picking the Tigers to go to the World Series. You're in a division where the Guardians look like they'll be pretty good again. So are the Twins considering themselves a realistic contender in that division?
Yes.
Or are they thinking, you say yes. So then, in my eyes, the offer for Pablo Lopez is going to have to be insane from somebody, because if you really think you're contending, why would you trade your best pitcher, right? And that's sort of the problem with the Cubs is like, if you really think you're going to be subtracting 10 games off the Brewers lead at the end of last season, or you think you can be the class of the division and get to the postseason with Kyle Tucker now, well, you don't want to be giving playoff ready or major league ready prospects along with guys off your lineup just to get another pitcher. So I see it difficult for all these trades. We all want to make the trade, right? Like everybody wants to make a trade. We want to trade with the Mariners. We want to trade with the Twins. The Cubs have the prospects, but it takes two to tango. And in this case, do you think it's likely or unlikely that he'll be on the Twins when the season starts?
Likely. I think it's very likely. I think the AL Central, very few teams in baseball, and especially the division, can go Buxton, Correa, Lewis in terms of talent. Again, that's the variability between this team being bad and good is how healthy those guys stay. Because if those three guys stay healthy and play, enough to qualify for the batting title, this team will win the division because it's put together in a way where the secondary pieces can support those guys. The problem is, last year, those secondary pieces had to be the primary pieces down the stretch, and guys like Willie Castro got, played out or exposed a little bit. And some other guys, a little more was asked of them than should have been expected. Brooks Lee's first trip around the big leagues was, a little bit shaky. But when those guys can be secondary pieces, if their top guys are where they need to be, there's every reason to believe that this Twins team can contend for the division. And I think that's right now where they're at. Those three in the lineup and then a rotation, Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober. That's a foundation of a good team in the AL Central.
I'm convinced this isn't happening. Again,
I'm trying to figure out who you'd be interested in from the Cubs to hypothetically make this happen.
Yeah, is there a position on the team where you say, well, we could use that guy from the Cubs and two of their close to major league ready? Because
the Cubs have a handful of outfield prospects that just don't really have
surplus.
Yeah, they just don't have a spot for them. And then they also have a second baseman and James Triantos, who is basically blocked by Nico Horner. They have guys, and I'm trying to figure out who the Twins would be interested in even if they sent back a major league talent as well, like Javier Assad or Jordan Wicks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The name I was going back to was Assad, and I think there's reason to believe there's still something in there. I know he's going to be 28 here coming up this season, but certainly a guy to dream on, and he's going to be cheap for a little while yet. And, he's at an age where you don't have to worry so much about chewing up years of free agency if you sign him to a deal too, because your older starters, you don't have to get as worried about that with. The Twins are in the same position with Joe Ryan. So in theory, if you could put something together around Assad, and if the Twins saw Assad as someone they could maybe find another level from, mess with the sequencing or whatever, then you could have the foundation of something there. I don't think he can be the most intriguing piece in a deal, which is to say I think he can be the most useful in 2025 to the deal. Uh-huh. But I think you'd have to give up somebody in that farm system that's going to make a lot of your fans really, really uncomfortable.
Right. It's going to take, well, first of all, I would guess that if you're going to give up a guy you consider your ace, they're going to want your top pitching prospect. They're going to probably want Cade Horton, who, by the way, was injured. So that makes that a little bit tricky. At the end of last season, he was injured. Yeah. So, but that's the type of thing you're going to want. Or you're going to say, no, we want Assad and Ben Brown and whatever else. Like, it's a tricky mix. If it's not the Cubs, Brandon, if it's not the Cubs, what other teams have you heard in Minnesota that the Twins might be at least listening to offers for Pablo Lopez? Is there anybody else that really fits that narrative?
I think the Orioles would make a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're flush with infield prospects. And again, you're adding to what you already perceive to be an organizational strength if you trade Pablo for an infield prospect. But if it's a really dang good one, like if you can really push them to trade, I know Jackson Holliday's not in that conversation, but whoever their next guy is, whether it's, obviously not Gunnar, but the next guys down that list, I mean, maybe that's the second team I would watch out for. Other than that, with the way pitching is right now, like everybody's kind of a wild card to jump into that mix. Once Flaherty signs, does someone get desperate because that's one solid option off the marketplace? And as that gets thinner, do trade values go up? There's a lot of it that we don't really have that information from in the public sector. But I don't think he's going to be on the move. But the Cubs are the team I'd watch for sure. And then I think the Orioles are kind of like my John Heyman mystery team, if I were to steal a phrase.
So something for us to get excited about, and then it not happen. Yeah.
Basically, like I almost expected him to say there was a mystery team on Roki Sasaki when everyone had the three teams nailed down. I figured he'd hop in there with a don't sleep on the fourth team. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting to hear your perspective on this, because I think a lot of fans just kind of look at it. We love to talk in our YouTube chat or on social media, just like it's MLB The Show, where it's like, you can easily do this. And like, yeah, the Cubs have plenty of assets that they can move. Yeah. They got to be smart about it. And we also have to acknowledge the other side of the spectrum. And when you're telling me that you think the narrative related to the money situation there is kind of overplayed, then, I guess I'm brought down a little bit here, because I feel like I thought that was probably a big deal, and you're making it. Maybe you're just doing it to do it, but it sounds like you're playing it down.
Yeah, the new GM hopped on a call or like a YouTube thing with their radio network and said he kind of gave a hint like, yeah, the budget's not really in danger of being slashed, or it was more positive than anything we'd heard in the last 14 or 15 months in terms of budget and the looming potential sale of them, whether it's to the Ishbia brothers or anybody else, I think also is considered universally positive just because of how detested the Pohlad ownership group is. So I think fans are really hanging on the idea that the payroll is just going to kind of stay where it is. And then hopefully, if the Ishbias buy them, they have some kind of splash a la the Suns when they took them over. So we're cautiously optimistic, which if you know Minnesota sports fans, and especially after last night, like we're never cautious anything. So we're always just self-loathing, doubting. Yeah. So this is something we're cautiously optimistic about, believe it or not.
We all silly like the mayor.